It's certainly not pretty. It's effective enough. But I've got to say, where are the goals going to come from? Hello everybody and welcome back to OUFC fan viewers. Ian here once again. It's time for another review of another Oxford United game. Today the U's were on the road. They were away at Derby County. It's a massive week in Oxford's season. This game against Derby is followed by a home game against Portsmouth. If Oxford were to win both of those two games, you could put any fears about relegation to bed. If they were to lose them both, well, you start to think we're right back in the relegation mix. And I think most of us expected a resurgent Derby County tonight with what's happened to them over the last week or so. But we didn't get that at all. You didn't get really any urgency from either side. A very lacklustre, dull game, which in the end is certainly more beneficial for Oxford United than it is for Derby County, because this one finished a bore draw. Derby County 0, Oxford United 0. And we'll do what I normally do on this channel. I'll go over the team news. I will go over what incidents did happen in this very dull game. And then I'll give my final thoughts for both sides at the end of the video. If you do want to jump to the end and just see my final thoughts, and I've got to say I can't blame you on this video, then please feel free to do so. The timestamps are down below. But I do always encourage you to watch the whole video. But either way, hit that like button. I really need the likes on these 0-0 draws because they really don't get many views at all. And if you do like the content overall, consider subscribing. So let's have a look at the team news, starting with Oxford United. And Gary Rowett makes 3 changes from the side that lost 1-0 to Burnley a week ago. Peter Kioso, Sariki Dembele and Mark Harris come back into the side. Sam Long, Tyler Goodrum and Tom Bradshaw are the ones who come out of the side. Bradshaw is missing the game through injury, and it looks likely that he's going to be out for weeks. So when Oxford United speak, who knows when he's going to come back? We may not see him again for the rest of the season. So it means, like last season, all the burden is going to be on Sparky. But have no fear, Oxford fans. Mark Harris scored a brace on this ground last season in what was probably Oxford's finest away win, or certainly one of them, last season. So maybe that will rejuvenate Harris and give him a goal. But we also did see Stan Mills on the bench, and that's the first time he's featured since signing last month. Moving on to Derby then, and it is all change for the Rams, with John Eustace on the verge of taking over. Not being confirmed yet, but it's pretty much will be. And it's pretty clear that John Eustace's job is to save Derby, who are really struggling at this stage of the season. They started the night in 22nd place, 9 points behind United. That points difference stayed in place, but Derby did move themselves out of the drop zone. But more worryingly for Derby, they have not won since Boxing Day. So it's caretaker manager Matt Hamshaw in charge again, but he did get a valuable 1-1 draw against Norwich at the weekend, and Hamshaw makes 2 changes from that game. Caden Jackson and Callum Elder replace Thompson and Osborne. Defender Sondre Langras makes his Pride Park debut, and penalty hero from the weekend Jerry Yates is quite surprisingly on the bench. So let's just say this game was certainly not a classic, and pretty much all the way through it, rather than both sides going out to win it, you sense there was very much a case of let's not lose this game and then let's maybe see if we can nick something later on. It was all very low key, and as they said on Sky, all very safe. But the majority of the chances did fall Derby's way, not being most clear-cut of chances. The first was after 3 minutes, and it was Derby's first ball in the box, which Oxford didn't really deal with. Mendes Lang got the ball. It was very wide and tight to the byline, but he tried a shot. JB Cumming spilt it, just about caught it at the second attempt. But 13 minutes later, and again, it was an untidy game, but this was the second time Derby put a ball into the box, and it caused problems again. Salverson did well to win the header, played it back to Hoodmine, who got some space in the box. He turned and shot on the spin, but he put it wide. Oxford's one real chance came on 25 minutes. It was a bit out of nothing, really, but Oxford did have a little spell of possession. The ball got out to Dembele, 25 yards. That was a good hit by Dembele, who's yet to score for United. That would have been a wonderful time to get his first goal, but Zetterstrom did well to tip it over the bar. So there were some half chances for Derby through this first half, but nothing too threatening. But the best chance or the best shot on goal they had was on 43 minutes. Hoodmine beat a couple of players on the Derby left, and his shot was deflected, but it fell quite nicely into the path of Mendes-Lang, who was on the edge of the box. It was actually a belting shot by Mendes-Lang, really well hit. But fortunately for Oxford, was straight at Jamie Cumming. So we got to half-time at 0-0. Oxford probably will be the happier of the two sides, but let's face it, we've barely laid a glove on this Derby backline. Derby have had 9 shots, but not many of them have been threatening, and you'd just about say they've forced the issue a little bit more than Oxford, and they've just about probably played the better football, but there's not really much between the two sides, both of them have sat very deep when they're out of possession, and when they've been in possession have been very slow and plodding, and there's been a lot of back and sideways passing. But you would always expect the onus will be on Derby to go and win this game, and you're thinking that at some point they're going to push on and try and win it in the second half, which might, on the flip side, open up some space for Oxford on the break. Maybe that's just wishful thinking, because surely this game's got to improve, because at half-time, it's very much 0-0. Oxford had a good first couple of minutes at the start of this first half, maybe a good 5 if I'm generous, and Dembele won a free kick high and wide on the Oxford left. Cameron Brannigan tried to catch Zetterstrom out by smashing it towards the near post. Adams diverted it behind for a corner, but let's say Oxford did start relatively brightly, but the game then drifted into its usual pattern of slow, methodical passing, nobody really getting up any head of steam. And we drifted into 60 minutes on the clock, half an hour to go, and you just haven't seen any sustained pressure from either side. Derby were the first to make changes, bringing on their top goal scorer, Yates and Harness, and that seemed to work for a little flurry of Derby chances came shortly after these changes were made. First of all, again, a ball into the box from a set piece. Oxford just cleared the first bit of danger, but then the ball was put back in. It was actually a very acrobatic effort by Salverson at the back post. It was on the volley, and if he'd have caught it sweetly and it would have gone in, it would have been one of the goals of the season. But it hit the ground and just looped harmlessly in the air for Jamie Cumming. But that kind of woke Derby up a little bit. We finally saw a little bit of pressure and a little bit of momentum from Derby County, and the crowd got into the game maybe for the first time. Again, it was a ball into the box, again from a set piece. Salverson got his head on the ball. It was pretty far out though. Wasn't the most powerful of headers, and once again, it's pretty comfortable for Cumming to save. And Harness headed another chance over just a couple of minutes later from another cross, and all of a sudden, Derby had upped the tempo, passing it a little bit quicker, and they were the ones who were playing with purpose. Rowett then made changes for Oxford, and we saw Placheta and Matos come off and Rodriguez and Mills come on. And after that Derby spell of pressure, it was nearly an almighty howler from their goalkeeper, and nearly a huge slice of luck for Oxford, which gifted them the first goal. Zetterstrom was taking an age to clear a back pass, and Harris had closed him down, and by the time Zetterstrom cleared it, he smacked it straight at Mark Harris, and luckily from a Derby point of view, it went over the bar. I've got to say, on the night, and this is saying something, it was probably the closest Oxford came to a goal. And I don't know whether that just sort of spooked Derby a little bit, because that head of steam I was talking about very quickly subsided and we went back into the usual pattern of play. And I've got to say, from then on in, maybe like the final 15 minutes of this game, I thought maybe it was Oxford who looked the more likely to win it. They started to look a little bit more comfortable in the midfield. Mills looked a very lively outlet on that right-hand side. He got in a couple of good crosses, and suddenly you started to think Oxford might nick this game. We saw Goodrum come on for Dembele into the final 10 minutes. And on 86 minutes, Oxford had a good chance to nearly steal it. They were on the break, and Stan Mills did well down the right-hand side, and his low cross was deflected all the way to the back of the area onto Oxford's top goal scorer. That's Greg Lee, by the way, who met it and struck it really well. But it was going wide, but Mark Harris nearly diverted it back into the goal. But it was just hit a little bit too hard for Sparky to get anything on it. And despite the Derby crowd urging their side forward, you never really saw any chances in the 3 minutes of added on time. And it ended 0-0. And you felt like both of these sides could have played for a long time, without scoring a goal. And that brings me on to my final thoughts, and we'll start with the home side in Derby County. And if you are a Derby fan watching this, thank you very much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it, and I'd really be interested to know your thoughts on this game. But we'll talk about the managerial appointment in just a moment, and let's talk about what we saw on the field. And I've got to say, I would be pretty worried if I was a Derby fan, and there's got to be a big change when the new manager comes in, because I thought that this was a golden opportunity for Derby to play on the front foot tonight against a side in Oxford who, I got to say, we're not a very good side away from home. We really struggle to score goals, but we're pretty much just workmanlike, and we might nick a goal or we might score a worldie here or there, but we're rarely going to dominate a side, if ever, away from home. So I thought this was an ideal opportunity for Derby to really lay a marker down and lay a statement down that they could to get a big 3 points. But I just thought you played so cautiously and in such a timid fashion. I was really surprised how, for the large part, Oxford were relatively comfortable in this game. But I thought those new signings that you've got did look pretty good. Langus looks a real solid defender at the back, very imposing defender, and Savison looks a decent striker up top. You can get balls into the box to him, he's going to create chances, so you've definitely got things to look forward to. But again, it's just the way you move the ball was so slowly in the first half. So many times you went backwards, sideways and backwards, just content to just keep the ball and not make any mistakes. And I guess when you did try to play the ball out, sometimes you did make mistakes and get picked off in possession, so maybe that just created even more uncertainty in the Derby players. But I just was surprised that maybe at the end of the first half and then a little period on about the hour mark, you had a few minutes of sustained pressure, but nothing major. And yeah, I guess you could have nicked a goal in that time, but overall I didn't think there was a real concerted effort for Derby to go and win this game, and that was what really surprised me, and that's what maybe should worry you if you're a Derby fan. Are you a little bit short at the back? I know you've lost Nelson's out for the season and Cashin obviously being sold, so are you worried about being exposed at the back, and that's why you were a little bit cautious? But the main news is obviously that John Eustace is going to come in, and you're hoping that John Eustace can have the same sort of impact that over Derby that Gary Rowett has had over Oxford, because the fortunes have improved massively for us in a short space of time, and you'll be hoping if Eustace can come in and do that, then Derby can very quickly move away from this drop zone, even at the moment as it looks pretty desperate, because I know it is looking bad at the moment and you haven't won a game yet in 2025 in the league, and that doesn't look good. But I'd just like to say, more than anything else, this, I'm sure you're looking at it as a line in the sand and you'll forget this game and you can move past it, and you've got to just now look at what John Eustace can bring. It's pretty much certainly going to be him for these final 15, 14 games of the season. Let me know your thoughts, Derby fans, down below. Let me know your thoughts on this game, and let me know if you think that you've got what it takes to still stay up in this division. Because believe me, from an Oxford point of view, I'm still not convinced that we're safe and we're going to stay up, and I know we can get dragged into it quite easily. So as much as I'm content with the point, I'm still a little bit disappointed we didn't push on ourselves to try and maybe win this one. But in the end, we have to settle for a point like we did at the Kassam. Good luck for the rest of the season, Rams fans, and hopefully we'll see you again next season. And that brings me on to Oxford United, and if you did listen to my final thoughts on Derby, you could probably copy and paste much of what I said and put it into this segment, because same sort of thing really. Oxford just looked pretty safe and comfortable, and when in possession, didn't really try to do much on the ball, struggled to open Derby up, certainly from open play, and didn't really create many chances. Just the fact that we've got 9 more points on the board than Derby, and we're relatively safe in the lower mid-table, where a 0-0 draw looks pretty acceptable from our point of view. And once again, defensively pretty solid at the back. Derby, a good side from set pieces, a good side when they throw the balls into the box, and I thought generally defended that really well. Back 4, midfield in front of them, pretty solid base, tough to beat, but it is, and very workmanlike, and it's not pretty, as I said at the start, but it is picking up points, and those points on the road that we maybe wouldn't have got under the previous manager, like at Plymouth, like at Stoke, like at Preston, now away at Derby. are just inching us ever closer to Championship safety. But it isn't pretty. It isn't good to watch. And I wonder how long this goes before there is going to be some moaning from the Oxford fans. And I think probably this season we'll persevere with it. But I think if we start being dished it up on a regular basis next season, we might start to be a little bit peeved. Because it isn't fun to watch and it's not good, and we as I say, we just do not look like scoring. We just look so ponderous, especially when a side sits deep and is prepared to just let us have the ball. I just don't know how we're going to break them down. If we went 1-0 down in this game, I would not have had a clue how we would have got back into it, because we're just playing aimless balls over the top for the large part in the first half. Second half got a little bit better. It did improve. I thought the subs made a difference, actually. I thought Mills looked good when he came on. I thought Rodriguez looked good when he came on. As a few times this season where Rodriguez has impressed from the bench, and then he starts a game and he kind of goes missing and you want to bring him out again. So I never know what you're going to get from Rodriguez, but I thought this was one of his better performances. Because I thought Matos, I was expecting a lot for him today, but this is what you do when you put too much pressure on a teenager. He didn't really get into the game and didn't really perform like we saw him do against Burnley. And again, it just leaves me thinking of Oxford had a week to prepare for this game. Derby had the game on Saturday, so you'd think maybe there was a little bit of fatigue creeping into the Derby legs, but didn't really show. And as I say, Oxford had a week to prepare, and he just came out with the most basic of basic game plans. Let's try and keep the game tight and nick it 1-0. Fantastic. They do all these articles saying, what have Oxford worked on this week? It's like, what do you think they've worked on? They've just done basic training and get Rowett working on how to be solid out of possession more than anything else. And again, I know we've got Plahetta's pace, but in recent weeks he's not really doing what I want to see him do, which is driving with the ball down the line. Too often he gets the ball, tries to cut inside when I want to see him run down the line, which is what you saw Mills do when he came on. All of a sudden we did look a little bit more threatening. But not a lot from Dembele, and certainly not a lot from Mark Harris, who once again is not having any service, but his general hold-up play is not good enough at the moment for what we need, and he's struggling to kind of get Oxford into the game, which is again where we looked so much better when Rodriguez came on, because he just seemed a little bit more likely to hold up the ball. But with Bradshaw injured, what do? You just have to play Harris, don't you? I mean, it doesn't look like he's going to give Romani a go, so it's just kind of going to be Harris up front doing the needful like he did last season. And I do feel sorry for Harris, but it has to be said that he isn't looking likely of scoring many goals in the run-in. But it does always make me think, if the way Oxford are playing, if we did have a real lethal penalty box poacher in there, like someone, let's say, like Isidore from Sunderland, or if we had, I know he's gone now, but Latte Laff when he was at Middlesbrough, would they be any different? Would they be able to carve out chances for themselves? What would they do different to what Mark Harris is doing? Because largely Oxford aren't really creating anything for him. But I guess overall, we went into this game thinking, if anything, it was must not lose. Keep Derby 9 points away from us, and that would be job done. And that is exactly what we got. Again, I'm a little bit thinking, this is a game we really could have liked. If we'd have just been a bit more intense, a bit more purpose, we could have beaten this Derby side today. A bit like we could have done against Stoke, a bit like what we could have done against Bristol City at home. But once again, I guess a point is better than nothing. It's a massive game on Saturday now, and I'm expecting Portsmouth to come at Oxford all guns blazing in this game. And they won tonight. Played well against Sheffield United at the weekend, were unlucky, and I think they'll be chomping at the bit to go at this Oxford side. And if anything, you might have to see Oxford play a little bit like the away team in this game, because I think that Portsmouth are going to take the game to Oxford, maybe more than we've seen any side do at the Kassam under Rowett so far. So should be an interesting one. You know, Pompey games are always a bit spicy. They're going to pack the away end like they normally do, and they're going to be in good voice. And who knows, maybe you're going to see a rousing Oxford United victory, because we generally do seem to play better football when we're at home. But there probably won't be many of you commenting on this one. It was a bit lacklustre affair, but we ended up coming out with a point. It's another point closer to safety. and I guess you just have to take the positives out of it rather than anything else. And if we can beat Portsmouth at the weekend, that is still a very good week's work. So that's all from me. There'll be a predictions video in the next couple of days, and then it's that big review of the big game on Saturday against Pompey. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back very soon.